Welcome to the Long Thread podcast about spinning, stitching, and weaving by hand. The podcast is presented by Long Thread Media, publishers of Spin-Off, Handwoven, Piecework, and Little Looms magazines. Find us online at longthreadmedia.com. Trinway Silks is where weavers, spinners, knitters, and stitchers find the silk they love. Select from the largest variety of silk spinning fibers, silk yarn, and silk threads and ribbons at trinwaysilks.com. You'll discover a rainbow of colors thoughtfully hand-dyed in Colorado. Love natural? Trinway's array of wild silks provide choices beyond white. If you love silk, you'll love Trinway Silks, where superior quality and customer service are guaranteed.
Hi, I'm Gabi Van Tassel from Bluebonnet Crafters, and I'm the inventor of turtle pin looms. Pin looms are small handheld looms that quickly weave self-contained fabric pieces like squares, hexagons, and more. Weave with almost any yarn you have on hand, then combine the fabric pieces into projects of any size. These looms make wonderful companions for any fiber lover, at home or on the go. I'd love for you to visit us at turtleloom.com to explore the full loom catalog, patterns, and more. Hope to see you there.
I'm your host, Long Thread Media co-founder Ann Marrow. Pamela Schultz is a weaver, spinner, and knitter. She became the editor of Spin-Off in 2025. A quick note, later on in our conversation we mentioned SOAR without explaining what that is. The Spin-Off Autumn Retreat is an annual gathering of hand spinners that began in 1983. It's one of my favorite weeks of the year. Hey, Pamela, thanks for joining me.
Hi, Ann. Thanks for having me.
So, Pamela, you're the editor of Long Thread's oldest publication, and in some ways the dearest to my heart because I was former editor of Spin-Off. But Spin-Off is about to turn 50. What does it feel like to be the latest person to have this blessedly middle-aged publication?
Well, it's kind of surreal, actually, because when I started spinning, Spin-Off was there. And you and our previous editor, Kate Larson, and even Linda Ligon are still around and to, throw ideas around in meetings. And sometimes they say, don't meet your heroes, but, everybody on the Long Thread team has been so great. And it's just such an honor to be part of the team and to be part of this legacy.
I do feel really lucky to have this team. We are just a lot of people who are very passionate about this. I think spinning is an interesting one, that Spin-Off is the oldest Long Thread publication. There was something called Interweave once upon a time, but Spin-Off literally spun off.
Yeah, it's just mind-boggling. And, one of my favorite things to do when I was a brand new editor was to go through the archives and look at, how we talked about things 40, 50 years ago and how some of those things are the same and how much we've grown as a community since then. It's just a really, really special thing.
Yeah. And I think that always was one of the things that was most challenging for me as an editor, is because some people will remember that we talked about it a particular way in 1983, but there are also so many people who have kind of come in since then. So figuring out what we can do for both of those people.
Right. And I mean, I see on Reddit every day, somebody's learning how to spin, and how do we present things to them in a way that's great for everybody, that brings something new to somebody who's really experienced, but also is helpful and informative to somebody who's brand new to the craft. Because, ultimately, when it comes down to it, we are a community of people, and we want everybody to be part of this celebration.
I think that the issue of being a beginner can really be difficult for something like Spin-Off, and also for Handwoven as well. But if you have been doing something a long time, you kind of assume you know how to do things, and maybe you skip over the things that we label beginner basics. But
right.
But I don't know if there really is beginner spinning.
I mean, I think back to when I was a beginner spinner, and it was before YouTube. And I had just seen somebody spinning, and she said, oh, well, you need to start with a drop spindle. And so I got a drop spindle, and I got some fiber and a book. And I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I thought that it was the fiber that was wrong, or what it actually was the fiber was wrong. It was very felted. But I kept buying more spindles because I thought maybe it's the spindle. Maybe it's me. I mean, I thought I understood the processes that were described in the book, but I didn't know how the fiber should feel. And that's one of those things that's just always a challenge to communicate in print. How does it feel? How does it look? And how does it behave in your hands? We're doing a lot of work to translate these physical processes to the pages of the magazine. And I think our team does a great job of that.
Yeah, it's certainly being able to have a lot more color photos. And then also, we think of, we're speaking about Spin-Off as a magazine because that's how it started, and that's important. But, you can get a little bit closer with some of our videos, and you can't hold it in your hand, but you can see it move and stuff like that.
Yes, absolutely. And that was another thing that once I really did pick up spinning in earnest, long before I was part of the team, I found the videos were very helpful to me as a spinner. I might not have been able to travel to Maryland Sheep and Wool or something like that, but I could learn from Judith McKenzie how to pick out a fleece, or from Maggie Casey some of the beginner and advanced things that you just need to know as a spinner. And those are great resources still.
I first learned to spin because Amy Clark Moore won a beginning spinning class with Maggie in Interweave's annual holiday benefit auction. And everyone laughed so hard when she won that prize. And I had just moved from New York, and I was a knitter, and I thought it was bicycle spinning. And so I told Amy that story. And I of course, I do love to laugh at myself. And Amy, being the incredibly generous person that she is, said, well, you can take my class. And I said, well, why did you sign up for a beginning class? Why did you put your ticket in for a beginning class? And she said, well, but you could always learn something from Maggie.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've had the opportunity to take several classes from her, and I always learn something new. She's a great teacher.
She is. And she really likes teaching beginners because she says that, that they come up with these really interesting questions. But what an interesting match. Sometimes I talk to people who think that because they're advanced at something, they can only teach advanced people. And it's not. It takes so much skill to help somebody.
Yes. Breaking down the thing that you know how to do, that you know physically in your body how to do, which is what spinning is, and translating that into language and steps that somebody can take and do it themselves is actually the hardest thing. So that beginning spinning teacher is, a real skill. And I would say for the folks who, maybe think themselves too advanced for a beginner class, is that if you want to teach, go to a beginner class, especially with somebody like Maggie, because then you're going to learn how she's talking to students and how students are approaching it. And that's really something that I think the community could use more of, more people teaching each other how to spin.
We have never really been able to fully get it off the ground, but I started this program called The Great Aspineration, probably close to 10 years ago. And the idea was that every spinner knows way more people who don't spin than we do. So we should all go out and make more spinners. There's a sort of a novice spinner in the UK who came up with the term to be aspinerated, and I just love that term. And so we came up with some written handouts for how to teach people to spin. And I asked Maggie to teach a class on how to teach people to spin. And the way that we could figure out how to do it was to get her to teach somebody on camera. So the spinning teacher is out on our website, and it's free, but it's a great way to learn to spin, and also a great way to kind of see how other people can teach spinning.
Yeah, and those handouts are a great resource. I used them when I was teaching beginning drop spindle classes long before I worked with long thread. And I think there's a really nice web address that we have for that too. I think it's like learntospin.com or something. Speaking
of, you were told you have to start with a spindle. I think over time, the assumptions about what you have to do have changed a lot. That it used to be that everybody assumed that you started with a boat anchor spindle and a greasy fleece. And now a lot of people start with an e-spinner.
It's really about what is available to you and what's comfortable to you. And the truth is that I tried for a long time with drop spindles, and I didn't quite get it until I got a wheel. And for me, the action of treadling and moving my hands at the same time is really the thing that engages me the most. And it wasn't until I considered myself a pretty advanced wheel spinner that I came back to spindles and started to enjoy them more. And the spindles that are popular today might not be the ones that are right for you. I really like a top whirl drop spindle, and it seems like the supported spindles are really having a moment right now. And they're great, but it's not my preference. So I would definitely encourage people who are wondering where to start to go to a guild or a yarn shop that has spinning equipment, or even a fiber festival, and see what's there and talk to people and ask if you can try things, because that's really how you're going to figure out what's working for you.
How do you see people getting into spinning? And I guess I should back up and say, you got interested in spinning. What was it about this maybe peculiar looking activity that's made you say, I got to do this?
Well, I was in law school at the time, which is its own peculiar activity. And very stressful. And I was at an art festival, and there was a little corner where people were doing historical reenactments. There was a blacksmith, and there was, a guy making shoes, and there was a woman in a tent full of alpaca fiber, and she was spinning on a Saxony wheel. And I just thought, that looks really relaxing. And I had been a knitter at that point for about 10 years. And people had said, oh, you need to make your own yarn. You need to learn how to spin. And I said, no, I'll never do that. But then I saw it and I thought, I could use that. And it wasn't for a few more years before I actually was able to pick it up and really learn how to do it. But it was that peaceful rhythm of drafting and treadling that was really appealing to me. I think I'm seeing people get into spinning in a lot of different ways. They're seeing their friends do it on Instagram or on Reddit, Facebook, all the social media platforms. And it's really appealing to see a Turkish spindle wrapped with the perfect, we call them a turtle because it kind of looks like the shape of a turtle, that perfect ball wound onto the spindle, or, the really pretty spindles that are hard to get and it's all laid out there. It's just really appealing to be able to control your colors, to control the fiber that you choose. Some people get into it because they have their own animals and they want to make their own yarn. There's just such a broad range. But I think when it comes down to it these days, it's really about fun. It's about something that we do for ourselves to engage our hands, which is something that we really don't have enough of with everything being so digital these days. So it's a great way to just kind of slow down and be in a physical space and have something to show for it.
Yeah. I fell in love with the fiber first, the color and the texture. But then I found that, and I think it's partly because I was working on first Maggie Casey's book and then Judith Mackenzie's book, it started to kind of get into my bones. It started to change the way that I looked at everything. Judith said at one point, the forces that are at work in the universe are at work in your yarn. And there's Neanderthal yarn. And spinning, textiles are what make us human, and spinning especially so.
Definitely. There's so many great Judithisms. Yeah. That's a really good one.
Mm-hmm. And so now when people say, what craft do you do? I mostly knit. I do some weaving, but I am a spinner.
Mm-hmm.
It's that sort of like, it becomes part of you.
Right. Definitely.
And you do a lot of other things too. I mean, you've had a sweater on the cover of Spin-Off, and you had a YouTube channel with lots of great weaving content before you took on this role.
Yeah, got a stack of tea towels that have been waiting to be hemmed since before the last photo shoot. And
yeah.
So I weave, I spin. I learned how to weave about 6 months after I learned how to spin. And I knit. I dabble in crochet, but I wouldn't call myself a crocheter. I'd say anytime I want to start, I have to pull up a video to remind myself all the things, and I can just about get by, but I wouldn't send it in to be published anywhere. I've done a little bit of rug hooking and rug punching. Yeah, I just always try to go back to yarn. Anything that I can connect to yarn is fair game.
So, speaking of photo shoots, you recently came out for a photo shoot, and I saw a picture that you posted on Instagram of your suitcase bursting. And I'm not sure that anybody really knows what a photo shoot is like, but I feel like spin-off photo shoots are a little different. Can you talk us through a little bit of what that is like?
Yeah, so we get all of the articles in, all of the text from all of our wonderful authors, and then we meet as a team to kind of talk through how we're going to make these things come to life on the pages of the magazine with the pictures. And a lot of our authors are sending in their finished projects or their yarns or their fibers. And so we are finding backgrounds for those. We are finding props to go along with those. But other times we are adding things from our own stashes of tools, of fiber. And so that's what goes into my suitcase. All the little, I'm usually bringing a handful of spindles with me. One of our other editors always brings her box of spindles. So those will be featured throughout the pages of the magazines. Sometimes we're talking about specific breeds of sheep or other fiber animals. So we make sure to have some samples of those fibers on hand. I always try to pack at least one pretty braid that hasn't been in the magazine before so that we can feature indie dyers who are definitely a big part of our community. And then we have just these little odds and ends. The last couple of issues, I've found myself going around my yard, picking up tree branches and acorns and other sorts of botanical things because I happen to have the plants in my yard that our authors are talking about, whether it's with natural dyeing or they're extracting fiber from these plants. So we try to show as many stages as we can, and that can get a little bit tricky. And sometimes other editors from out there in Fort Collins will bring in things from their garden. At the fall photo shoot, it was the photo shoot that we had for fall, which was the winter issue. I went to one editor's house and she picked a bunch of marigolds for me, and it was just before a frost and they ended up on the cover.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, it's just everybody is coming together with what we've got to just really bring the magazine to life with those pictures. And we spend a lot of time on set arranging things and moving things around. And our designer, Carrie Jackson, does a great job of laying things out. Or, I say, this is what I want to show. And she says, what are you talking about? And then we work with it. And our photographer, Matt Graves, he does a fantastic job. Just a couple weeks ago at the photo shoot, I asked him to take a picture of a color wheel of fiber. And I've been doing those on my Instagram myself. And he got a perfect image in 2 shots. What takes me 10 photographs to get something half as good. And so it's just really wonderful to be working with such great professionals.
I think there is also a bit of a, I'm going to use the word learning curve as well, because Carrie and Matt have a lot of experience at this point, but they are not necessarily spinners themselves. And so kind of trying to explain what these things mean. And so there's a reason why the spin-off editor is one of the few publications where you have to be on set.
Right.
Because you're the hands.
I'm the hands. I'm very often the hands. Sometimes I'm asking Matt to show off exactly how ugly this thing is, because we're talking about a dirty fleece that has, second cuts and dirt in it. And we really want to make that be emphasized. Or we say, I want to show this weird thing that's happening right here. And we had one in the summer issue that just came out with opposing ply yarns, which is an unusual yarn construction that creates some elasticity, and it looks different than a standard 2-plied or 3-plied yarn. And so we showed them next to each other, and Carrie and Matt kind of looked at it and said, I don't really see a difference. And Katrina and I looked at it as spinners and we said, oh yeah, it's there. They'll see it. And so that kind of having the spinner on site and, really seeing what the spinners want to see about these things is really interesting. And it's always a surprise because I see pictures of the things before I get there, but when I actually get to see them, in my hands or on the table when we're photographing them, there's always something new to discover. And that's really what I'm wanting to share with the readers.
I also do find that photo shoots are an excellent reason for stash enhancement.
They definitely are.
Work on a magazine for pretty much close to a year, and a photo shoot comes about like a third or 2/3 of the way, roughly through.
Roughly, yeah.
And then at the end of it, you go out to your mailbox and you find the thing that you made, and you just got the most recent issue in your mailbox.
I did
today.
Yesterday, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, it's still a little surreal. It's a little bit weird because you spend so much time working on that issue, and by the time it shows up in the mailbox, I'm knee deep in the next issue, and almost already thinking, I just had a meeting earlier today and we had to, spend 2 or 3 minutes trying to figure out what season it is actually today in the weather outside the window and what season we're working on.
Yes.
And what seasons just come out because they're not always the same thing.
Yeah, it's true.
So that part is a little bit, hard to wrap your head around, definitely those timelines. But it's really wonderful to see it all come to life, and the enthusiasm that we see from our readers and from our contributors sharing what they've made with the world is also wonderful to see. Because the way I think about it is that we're really here to share with the world all these great ideas that our contributors have and all the great things that they've made and help just build everybody up. And so it's great to see that people are happy with the things that they themselves have made.
Yeah.
I just sort of think of ourselves as kind of the conduit for it all.
Yeah. So, but, speaking of a conduit, when you are sitting down at the very beginning of that process, mm-hmm. How do you decide what makes up an issue?
It depends. We definitely have some issues that have specific themes. Our spring issue tends to be a color issue, for example. And that's really one of the topics that's near and dear to my heart because I am drawn to color, and I think a lot of other people are too. So we try to look at what we're seeing in the world and where those things are going. So in the textile world and the fiber arts world, what are the challenges that people are having? What are they asking for, or what are they not even sure how to ask for, but they're somehow struggling with? Whether it's a technique or some skill or just understanding terminology, or they want to know more about this breed of sheep that's suddenly popular or a type of spindle. So we look at those kinds of trends, and I always try to think of, okay, well, this is the trend now. How is that going to develop in about a year? So I'm looking at that. I'm also looking at the things that we already have in the pipeline. So there might be a really great idea, but it's super close to something that we've already planned to publish, and people wouldn't know about that because it's not out yet. And we're also looking at, like we talked about earlier, building on the things that have come before and just growing the information, the library of information that's out there about spinning, to just build up the community as a whole. So that's a lot of really abstract concepts, right?
Yeah. So what would you say are the ingredients?
Okay. So the ingredients would be articles, which are usually some kind of inspiration. I did this thing, and here's how you might think about doing it yourself. There are projects, which would be more like recipes. So here's a beautiful pair of mittens or a bag, and this is how the spinner spun the yarn, and this is the pattern to go and make it yourself. And then we also have tutorials, which are a little bit of a mix. So it's more like instructions, but it's a little bit of a jumping off point. So you might have an idea, and here's a technique to build your skills. And we also really love to have community-focused pieces in Spinoff. So we have several kind of categories of content. We have your finished object, which is really a really beautiful show and tell, and often has some really interesting little tidbits of information in them. And then we also have Makerspace, which is usually a little bit more business focused, and helps us share some of the great work that indie dyers, tool makers, yarn shops are all doing in the community spaces. And a new one that we've added is local fiber, and that one's still pretty broad. But yeah, I mean, it's all those little components that come together. And was it Linda Ligon who talked about it as throwing a party? And she
don't know.
Hopes that
sounds like her.
I think she said something along the lines, it's like a party. You don't want to have all the fun at the beginning, but you don't want everybody drunk on the floor by the time it's over.
Yeah.
We don't want to overwhelm people, but we want to give them something that they can come back to and really, really enjoy.
And I think that thinking about it as a potluck, I had one editor who just wanted people to bring whatever they liked best. And I said, well, what if that means you have 3 potato salads? And another editor said, well, I figure I'm going to eat again. And that's a reflection of the fact that sometimes people keep these issues for a long time and refer back to them. Mm-hmm. So mm-hmm. Yeah. Different perspectives. But yeah, I mean, definitely wanting it to be more of a balanced meal than just a flight.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what do you find most surprising in your role as editor of Spinoff in terms of what you see in the magazine or what you see in the community or what you see in our, I keep saying magazine, but we have extensive web content that comes out. You don't have to wait till 4 times a year. It comes out every week.
Yes. New articles every week, new videos all the time, both on YouTube and on our Learn platform. I think what's been the most surprising is the variety of connections and the variety of perspectives that I've been able to make with all kinds of different spinners, and really getting to see a much broader view of what the spinning community is really like. And it's wonderful. But when I started the job, I mean, my biggest surprise was that Ann Marrow emailed me and said, do you want to come to SOAR? And do you want to film a video before that? I was like, oh, sure.
Because you hadn't been to SOAR before, is that right?
That's correct. So when I learned to spin, I don't think it was happening in that brief period of time. And then when it started up again, I just wasn't in a place where I could really make it out to SOAR. And so it just had, landed in a window where I was not able to attend. So my first SOAR was as the content editor.
Yes. And I believe that was 2 years ago, because yes. We're getting ready to have SOAR again in York, Pennsylvania this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the same spot.
It is the same spot.
Yep.
I think some people can find it a little bit intimidating to come to SOAR. I, having started as a staff person, I started going in 2006, the same year that Kate Larson started. Mm-hmm. But of course, I already knew people. And I wonder whether other people might need some encouragement to come and kind of join the party.
Well, I say this as an introvert, very deeply introverted person, that my first SOAR was really fun, that everybody was really welcoming. I was helping out at the table with the little meal name tents, and somebody walked in and she had, this look on her face like, what am I doing here? And she said, it's my first time. And I said, me too. Let's figure it out. Yeah. And we're all spinners at SOAR. And so we all have that common place to start. And, if you don't know what to say, just ask people what classes they're taking. and ask them what they're learning. And it's amazing because everybody around the table will chime in and everybody will have something really interesting to say. And by the end of the night, you'll have a bunch of new friends.
Yes. And SOAR 2026 is on a wait list, but even for folks who are maybe loving spinning but aren't sure that they're up to the level, we always have classes that don't require, most of our classes you can take if you can, spin a continuous thread and make a 2-ply. But Maggie Casey has taken absolute beginners, even in her Beyond Beginning class. So there's often opportunities to kind of, dip your toe in and stretch a little bit without having to be totally overextended.
Right. I would definitely say that all levels of spinning, if you can just barely spin a yarn to you've got some big master spinner certification, you'll always learn something at SOAR.
Interesting about master spinner certification. I think it's interesting how many different ways people approach spinning, but also the way that changes over time. I'm very much a spinner who's a product of the time that I learned, which was 2006 or so, when people were buying pretty braids and making barber pole yarn. And that is what I like to do. But there's also folks who are much more systematic about it, who believe very much in spinning for a project or who believe in spinning for a study. And so I think it's funny that, the master spinner programs are such an accomplishment. And I also have no desire to take one.
I think I looked into it at one point and I said, I don't have time for that right now. But I also, I think that there's a lot to be learned from both approaches, because I think that the spinning just to spin fills a really deep need that a lot of us have, just to feel that fiber in our hands, to see the colors going around on the wheel, and to say, hey, look, I made this thing. Isn't it cool? And then the more specific approach can have its place too. It's definitely helpful if you have a big sweater in mind, or a blanket, or something that requires a lot of yarn and a lot of time. It's going to be an investment of money to buy all that fiber and spend all that time doing it. So it's worth it to take a little bit of time to sample and see if you're getting what you really want before you dive into that. So I think both have their place, and it is interesting how people fall into different camps.
And I think it's wonderful to be so flexible. There's not necessarily like this is hard or this is easy. We sometimes think of particular fibers as being hard or easy, but then people who don't know that start with them and do fine. Yeah.
Yeah. I started out as a woolen spinner, which a lot of people find difficult because you're not holding tight control onto your fiber. And to me, the holding tight control of your fiber makes my hands hurt. So, everybody's different. And that's what's beautiful about it.
Going back to when you first saw somebody spinning and decided that you wanted to pursue it, you got pretty serious about spinning as, I was going to say an amateur, as somebody who loves to do it. But then it also became something that you had a popular YouTube channel about, and that you have a small business that's kind of in the spinning world. So we sucked you in.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So, when I was learning how to spin, I was a lawyer, and I knew I didn't want to do that forever. And my husband and I built a business that enabled us to leave our corporate jobs. He was an engineer. And so we sort of built these things, and he's continuing to build all these things. And I decided that, I would run the payroll and do some of the admin tasks for the business, but that I was really going to take this opportunity to focus on fiber. And it's built such interesting things in my life. And over the years, I saw several jobs at Long Thread Media come up, and I said, oh, I can do about 20% of that. But it would be cool to work there. And then I could do maybe 50% of that. It would be cool to work there. And then I saw the job that I applied for come up, and I said, I think I could do like 85% of that. I think I'll apply. And I was just so grateful that you guys welcomed me in.
I think it also reflects the fact that, you are, you're a weaver. You always have something on the loom. And, in some ways there are times when you dive pretty deeply into weaving, and I love seeing more weaving in spin-off. I think there was a long time when spin-off, maybe because knitting was coming up and so popular at that point, but where it was very spinning focused. And so I really love having the breadth and lots of weaving involved.
Yeah, I think that a lot of spinners are people who try all the things, and we're all looking for more ways to use our hand spun, and we like to pick up new skills. And so I like to support that and spin off as much as I can.
That's why I bought my first rigid heddle loom. I met somebody at SOAR who had a mixed warp scarf. And so I bought a rigid heddle loom thinking I would use up lots of hand spun. And I've used up some hand spun. I've also bought a lot of yarn.
Yeah.
But if I were more disciplined.
I think spinners are the best enablers of adding new fiber hobbies.
I think so too. And I think it's kind of whether you feel like you need to do anything with your yarn or not, having spinning be its own craft and not just an adjunct.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Sometimes I feel like spinning as a spinner, I sometimes feel like I need to say it's a craft on its own, and it doesn't need to be, it's not that it's the little sister of other crafts. It's its own big grown up craft.
It is. It really is. I mean, a spindle whorl is the earliest known use of the principle of rotation. We had spindles before we had axles on wheels. So it's its own thing. It is really old, and it is its own special thing, and it can be so many things. And if all you do is sit down and spin for 10 or 20 minutes in a day, you're going to get somewhere. You're going to find something.
What are you excited about that's coming up?
Well, as we already mentioned, we have the 50th anniversary of Spin-Off coming up. And I have, a cork board of what's coming up in the upcoming issues. And I've got 50th party and a little drawing of a little party hat on my cork board. Like, how do I make this a party and really fun? So I'm really excited for that. And I'm really looking forward to SOAR this year. I think we've got a lot of great teachers coming, and I'm looking forward to everything that we're going to learn. And one thing that I've been enjoying, and I'm looking forward to seeing how people engage with, is our braid spinning course that we've done online with Kate Larson. So Kate has created these 5 lessons, and each video lesson is free. So even if you're not a subscriber to the magazine, you can go on YouTube or you can come to our website and watch these video courses and learn 5 different ways to play with your color and learn something new about spinning. And there's lots of great tips. I mean, I know how to chain ply, but I learned something new from Kate when she gave a chain plying tip. And I know how to card fiber, but I learned something new about a different way I can do it with one of her lessons. And so what we're really excited to do is to invite people to show us their samples and to learn along with us. And people we'll feature people in the magazine, and there's some other cool prizes that I think will be announced by the time the podcast comes out, but I'm not quite sure what they are yet. So I'm looking forward to what those will be. Yes. And I'm sure somebody very lucky will win them, and I hope that they will enjoy them.
It's interesting you're talking about carding, because I think nowhere is the range of personalities in spinning and the difference of opinions in spinning greater than talking about carding. I mean, the 4 folks on our video, How to Card Wool, could not be more different from each other. Yeah. And some of them have strong opinions about that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like, yep. Are you allowed to move your cards from one hand to the other? And yeah.
One's a left-hand card and one's a right-hand card. And when I learned how to card, I learned from Elizabeth Johnston. and she smacked my hand around because it was a safety issue to her. My thumb was in the wrong spot and I could just snag it on the carding cloth. And so I learned very specific motions for carding, but I don't always follow everything because they're tools that we can adapt to each need that we have in the moment. So I think that's really great too.
I do think it is so funny. It's I think the sharpest, maybe no pun intended, indication of like the differences within spinners and spinning opinions.
Yeah, because it's such an accessible tool, and on the other end of the spectrum, I've gone to festivals where people are demonstrating and their cards are so overloaded, and I just want to go and show them a better way to do it. So everybody's got their opinions, and
right.
If it's working for you and you're not hurting yourself or anybody else,
mm-hmm.
and you're getting the yarn that you want,
then
there's no harm done.
As we have this conversation, I am reminded of how much spinners love to encourage other people to spin. And so if anybody has not learned to spin and has gotten to this point, I will say, if you want to learn to knit, a knitter will probably say, that's great. Go and get some yarn and needles, and here's the website, and maybe I'll show you. And if you say to a spinner, I want to learn to spin, almost before you finish a sentence, you will have fiber in one hand and a spindle in the other. Saying,
it's true. And I'm guilty of that. I did that at Christmas with my niece and nephews. And it worked. They were spinning yarn before the day was over.
And you can. I mean, you can. Yeah. It's like 15 minutes to learn and a lifetime to master, but you can make something. Yeah. But there's just such a joy in sharing something that you love. And I do think that among spinners, it's particularly poignant.
Yes. I just think it's just the best thing there is.
I think so too. Well, Pamela, thank you so much for your time and taking time away from all the goodies that you're working on. And I can't wait to see you in person at SOAR soon and see what you're working on in my inbox.
Thanks, Anne. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks to our sponsors for supporting the podcast. Thank you for listening to the Long Thread podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate the show and leave us a comment on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. Thanks again.